Okay, welcome everybody to Wine and Time. So we're gonna discover what wine has to do with our cell phones. No, that's not true. We're gonna discover how air and oxygen can affect a wine. So the lucky wine we've picked for this glorious task today is a biodynamic vineyard from Southern Oregon, the Applegate Valley, Cowhorn Vineyards. And have any of you guys visited Cowhorn? Okay, cool. Cowhorn's great. You go out there and it's pretty amazing. A lot of their vineyards and where the Syrah is grown is mostly on a dried riverbed. So the stone that's part of that dried riverbed is really a powerful part of where Syrah and Grenache in particular like to grow around the world. So the Rhone Valley of France, which is where Syrah has ancient roots, meaning that they've been around there for a long time. That particular area, there's a wine called Châteauneuf-du-Pape, and that wine has these beautiful stones to it, or galets. And these stones are very important for holding heat and supporting temperature and supporting the vines and going down deeply into the earth. And what that's all about is the deeper they go, as they go deep like that, they will develop character, which can lead to something called minerality.
What are you talking about, stones?
Rocks.
I know, but...
So the actual soil looks like a bunch of rocks.
Oh, okay, so mixed in with the...
Like you don't see soil that looks ground up like that. You see more just rocks. And where Cowhorn actually, in the Rhone Valley, you see all this looks like a sea of rocks in that area. And at Cowhorn, they have an area their environment has a particular affinity for these grape varietals that are common in the Rhone Valley in France. And part of it is that their particular vineyard is a dried river bed. There's a creek that runs right by there, and their actual vineyard is a dried riverbed. And this particular climate and everything works really well with those varietals. So Cowhorn grows Syrah, Grenache in reds, and Marsanne, Roussanne, and Viognier in whites. And all 5 of those grape varietals are classic grape varietals from the Rhone Valley of France.
Never heard of those first 2 whites.
Marsanne, Roussanne, and Viognier is the other. So Spiral 36, the wine that Cowhorn does that comes out each June, yummy. That wine is about equal parts of each of those 3 varietals. Yeah. So that's a great way to think of that. So as I open this bottle, there's something interesting to see here. And it will make itself quite obvious before too long. So this freshly opened bottle of 2008 Cowhorn Syrah 74, if you'll notice, take a look at the cork. What is up with that? So there's a lot of sediment and stuff hanging out on the...
This is near Cantor Buckley.
Cantor Buckley. What is Cantor Buckley?
East Side Road, isn't that?
It's
Buckley?
East Side Road. Yeah, you can see all the sediment there. I'm not sure. It's past Valley View. Do you know where Valley View is? Yeah. So you would go past Valley View Vineyards.
Right. Are you talking about when you go up Upper Applegate Road?
No, you're on regular Applegate Road, like you're heading up to Applegate Lake. And then about 4 miles down, you come to a left turn for East Side Road. And they're about a mile down that on the left. Past that's...
By McKee Bridge?
No, that's on Applegate Road. You haven't gotten off to East Side. You haven't gotten off on East Side if you go to... Okay, yeah.
The East Side before you cross the river, before McKee Bridge, or do you go past McKee Bridge?
No, you don't go past McKee Bridge. It's before you cross over the creek at all. So
there's a sun.
Yeah. Okay. Now we'll do MapQuest after. There.
Okay.
Okay. Now look in the neck.
Right there.
All right. So you can see in the neck here. This is a really great one to see.
I can see it.
Yeah. So it's you can see all the sediment in the neck, and it's look at what's in the neck there. Now, it's very easy to open a bottle of wine like this and go, oh, that's bad. Don't do that. One of the things that keeps soul of wine intact, look at all that stuff in that neck, don't do that, is unfined and unfiltered. Okay, it allows what's there to be there. So one interesting thing about Cowhorn and the Syrah, they're breaking some rules here, which I really like. And one of the main rules they're breaking is that their vines were first planted in June of 2005. And in a conventional farming standpoint, you shouldn't necessarily even get wine, be able to make wine from grapes that quickly. So their 2007 Syrah was a beautiful example of a wine that showed lots of character and personality. It was only from a little over 2-year-old vines.
Wow. Do you think that's because of the nature of the gravelly?
It's part of it, but it's could have to me it's a lot because of the diversity in the environment and farming biodynamically that's supporting this microbial vitality in the soil. My very first time there, I saw a 7-8 foot wingspan golden eagle overhead. That's biodiversity. So if they're attracted to knowing that there's food there, the chances of a natural predatory cycle being in place is probably pretty apparent. And if that's the case, then that for them is supported by the idea that they don't spray. They're not using any synthetics at all. So there's nothing that they would spray that would negatively affect the plant systemically. So it's kind of interesting that way. Well, what am I going to do here to clean this thing out? This is the best way to do it. So get a clean towel, clean rag, and that's going to be the best way to kind of get all that out of there. There's a lot up by the neck. The other thing you can do is definitely pour a little wine into a glass. And if you do that, as you do that, I would rotate the bottle because you've got the sediment all the way around the top. Okay, shifting to, yes?
Why is there too much sediment?
Good question. I don't know. This kind of sediment does not have any flavor. So when you're not looking at something that will impart any kind of taste. So, okay, let me pour a little for everybody. So, Maylee, that's a good question. I don't know that I have a definitive answer for that, but I like a little sediment. It's kind of fun.
Chew your wine.
Yeah, chew your wine. I mean, that's the idea. I mean, you think of the word chew. I mean, it's fun to chew. I mean, we have a little radio show that we do on our website called Chew on This. And it's, we love the idea of having ideas and thoughts to chew on, I think, is wonderful. And I never recommend you hire me as a wine pourer because I am bad. and one of my favorite, actually the very first time I spoke in front of a group of people, I was so nervous. I had everything written out on these cards. I was so absolutely completely nervous I couldn't get the words to come out of my mouth. So what happened was I swirled. I finally just said, okay, I just have to move on. And I took the wine, lifted the first wine up, and just gave the wine a swirl. And there was so much in my arm and body that 1.5 ounces of wine was on my shirt and tie. And the next line out of my mouth was, well, the only way you can tell how much someone's into wine is by how much they have on their clothes. And I always carry multiple clothes with me now because I don't have much clean clothes.
Or wear black.
So click a glass to just say cheerio and to enjoy and savor the moment. Cheers, cheers. Give a good swirl and sniff and taste away.
Oh, this is yummy. Okay. It does. I know.
Mm-hmm. Pretty yummy, nice juicy acidity. Beautiful juicy acidity, nice dryness in the mouth. The dryness is the tannin, so that dryness is filled with wonderful things that's actually really good for us. We get scared sometimes of that bitter dry part, but that bitter dry part is where there's more nutrients than anything else in the wine. So you want to know what's healthy about wine? It's that part that makes your mouth pucker and makes things snappy and makes you want food. So that good yummy stuff. Now, what's that? You always want
I don't
food.
need a glass of wine to want.
Yeah. So there's I'm going to just give a story about wine and thyme using a wine from France for this story. So I used to work for a wine wholesaler, and that particular wholesaler, there was a wine from a region called Savennières, which is in the Loire Valley in France. It's a wine made from Chenin Blanc, C-H-E-N-I-N. And so the Savennières was a wine that was, wine people would call it tight, meaning that it just tasted very direct, very lean, but concentrated with really strong, intense acidity. But it didn't really show any fleshiness or texture that opened up. There was not much flavor diversity in the wine. What happened was I really just kind of didn't like the wine that much, so I poured it for a few clients as I was out running around for the day, and then put the wine down and forgot about it for about 2 or 3 days. I went back like 3 days later, and the wine had gotten all juicy and seductive and layered and all kinds of flavors, gorgeous long echo. I mean, it was fantastic. So I got so excited about it that I got extra samples from the company, and what I did is I'd let the bottle go, open it for like 3 days, use that, but to have a fresh bottle at the same time, just so I could show people. Because this idea at the time was so crazy. You know, but you really find that, and they're a natural winemaker, they also farm biodynamically. They farm organically, but they make their wine in a very natural way. So it was really interesting to see that kind of dynamic unfold, and to really get intrigued with this whole process. The way when wine really changes beautifully with air, I think of natural wine, or wine that's made in a certain way, and I'm going to recommend a book. Here's the book of the moment. A gal I know who's a wonderful wine writer. She definitely loves to push the edge. If there was a blog out called The Wine Antagonist, it could be hers, but it's not. She is very passionate about natural wine, about not manipulating and not over manipulating things. Robert Parker is the wine guru from the point of view of he has been given a lot of credibility in the wine world, deservedly so with a lot of it, and there's a point where how do you get back to just empowering the consumer to have their own opinion? And so she makes a real stand to say, this is what natural wine's about. And it's a wonderful, wonderful book, The Battle for Wine and Love, or How I Saved the World from Parkerization, by Alice Feiring. And it's F-E-I-R-I-N-G, and she's got a great blog. So, something fun. So in the realm of what we did now is we poured, so I took a bottle of Cowhorn Syrah that was opened over 24 hours ago and poured it into a decanter. And just look at how much sediment and stuff is on the side of this guy. Okay? And I also did with a bottle 48 hours ago. And it stayed in these decanters fully open like this. Now, I want to make a point right here, which is that that is not necessarily what I recommend you do at home. What I recommend you do at home, and what I think the wine needs in general to show natural wine, so Brickhouse would be a great one to do this with, you know, would be, and look at all the sediment even through the shoulder here. This is called the shoulder. Is the amount of air that you now see in this bottle here, that's great. So that's all you got to do. This is actually too much air for this amount of time. But to make the point, and because we just had a short period of time, I wanted to use this as a demonstration. So I would say in general, if you pour out one glass like that, or just enough like that to make a difference, and have your bottle sit around like that for 2 or 3 days, that will be awesome. That's really the way you want to do this. So what you really get to discover and play with then is have a glass, next day go back and have another glass, next day go back and have another glass, and watch the way the wine changes. And all wine will be different.
So what, with the cork in it or not?
With the cork in it, sure. Yeah, because now you've opened up air in here, so it'll start to oxidize and start to develop and do its thing and change however it wants to change with that little bit of air. The tendency with conventional wine is to sit there and gas those things and do all kinds of things because you're scared to get any air on it. If you're scared to get any air on it, then it's not natural wine. It's been manipulated into something that has everything up front, so it's more fragile. The analogy I like is I'm going to do it just from a movement point of view. The way I said that was, if you put everything look at my balance as I do this. If you put everything all up front, okay, I just lost my balance. So that's the idea. You know, so if you do a little bit of air, so ground a little bit, you do a little bit of air, you know, you can deal. I still got my balance. I can still function here. But if I put all the flavor up front, I've lost my balance. I don't have my grounding anymore. I don't have my relationship to the ground, and this is grounded. This is from the earth. So, you know, you want to support. Does that make sense at all? It's a funny analogy, but trying to make the point. So what I'm going to suggest that we have here then is with this wine, I'm going to suggest the way I had it in the decanter, to imagine that the one you're going to try next that was in here for a day, we're going to say that if you had done this, it would be the equivalent of maybe 2 to 2.5 days, 1 day, by being in a separate device like this for a full 28 hours. So we're going to say about 2 days will be the next one we'll try. And then the third one, I really wanted to push the envelope, which is why I left them in the decanter the way I did. Imagine the third one is maybe something that might be open for a solid 4 days. Now, obviously, this is not science, but a science experiment. So the decanters obviously give it a lot more air. And then you can see in there, where do you like the flavor best? So what's great about doing it this way and going down a little bit in the bottle is you can start to make your own notes and you can see where you like a wine best. Just, unless you drink the whole thing. So from that point of view, one technique, trying to give ideas, one technique to try would be open the wine, just do 1 glass, put the date, mark it, and just put it away. Don't even make yourself not touch it.
And drink the $8.99.
And drink the $8.99 one. That's right. There you go. Okay, so everybody had that experience. Let's go to number 2. So what happens after a little bit of time? We'll find out. So this has been in the decanter for a full 24 hours. So we're imagining maybe like 2 days or so in this mode. Now, one of the things with young wines in general is that the flavor development in young wines is more what's called primary. And primary means it smells and tastes like the fruit it's made with. When a wine has really had a nice, and that's a perfect thing. And I avoided you too. I didn't get it on your clothes, which is great. The thing with actually, let me just focus on this for just a second. Okay. No, thanks. All right. Awesome. Thanks. Okay, well, you guys got your nose in here, so let's stay focused on that. All right. So what?
The flavors are closest.
Here, let's trade. Here, you go here. I'll go here. So yes, exactly. So in the first one, what I'm saying is what you get mostly is what's called primary flavors. So in the freshly opened young wine, what you get is fruit flavors, oak, and acidity, if there's oak there. And a lot of people like that. Sometimes oak can give a sense of vanilla or spice, and that's a pleasurable taste from a pure pleasure point of view. Not necessarily natural wine. We want to get more into the fruit and those soil samples that we had here before. So in this case, you can start to see now it starts to flesh out. Now there are other flavors that start to come out. So you're getting more what's called secondary or non-primary fruit flavors, which would come out more once the wine has aged longer in bottle. Now, if you're not going to let this wine sit around for 3 years or 2 years or 4 years or whatever, playing with decanters and playing with getting air in there is kind of a way to get a sneak preview and have some fun with it. And natural wine will always benefit from air. It's part of the process. As I like to say, these wines are like a good book. They unfold like a story. So the cover has seduced you in. The first few pages hopefully give you something to look at. And then you just have to surrender and travel into the story and see how it goes. So what do you guys think of this? What's happening around the room?
Oh, more complexity.
More complexity. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I do taste that spicy.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
In a word.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was great.
No.
Do you guys notice the way the nose has a lot more interesting quality on the nose? All of a sudden, it becomes much more interesting to smell.
Yeah.
One of the analogies I like in a young wine, if they've used a fair amount of oak, and Cowhorn doesn't use that much oak, but I love the idea of like an eggshell. So it's like the wine is inside the egg. So there's some point where the eggshell gets cracked. And then when the eggshell cracks, things open up and then the wine will come out. And that's where this extra flavor, whether it's on the nose, in the initial palate, what's called the mid palate, or the lingering afterwards, that's where all that stuff starts to come out. Where at the beginning, you don't really get that so much. So, you know, now here, let's take something like this. Like the wine's $32 a bottle, right? So if the wine's $32 a bottle, I could go, okay, well that initial taste to me was maybe a $22 taste. This taste is like a $35 taste. You know, how did that happen? You know, so it's interesting how that dynamic changes. Can you guys see that? Do you see the way it tastes like, literally it tastes like a different wine? Like if you would just open that and make that same expectation, you know, it would take you on a different path.
Yeah.
Now, so where we're going here now is, this has been 2 full days in a decanter. So I'm going to say like 4 days now. Now 4 days is really pushing the envelope. You know, 2, 3 days, 2 days, that's one thing. 1 day sounds great, right?
Yeah.
1 day sounds great. 2 days open, that was phenomenal. 3 days, okay. Now this is all the way in my mind, because it was sitting in that open decanter for 48 hours. This is more like 4 days. All right, so what the heck does that mean? Let's find out.
It could be good, it could be bad.
Well, you know, from a conventional wine standpoint, it would be like the wine should almost be done. You know, you would think the wine would have gone away. Like when you do an $8.99 wine now, you know, have the experience of doing the same thing, and notice how long they last. And in particular, when you find a wine that's just really delicious on first sip, that's inexpensive, see how long that lasts.
20 minutes.
So you'll really be surprised. So, what's that?
That's right.
Yeah.
Swirl to aerate the wine.
Yeah.
So in case would you like not
Yeah.
do that?
Now, one of the things you can get is, well, with that, not necessarily.
That's what I mean. So the
Yeah.
longer it can.
Yeah. One of the things that you can do in general is there are aerators you can buy. Like at Harry & David, they sell aerators.
Right.
And you actually can pour your wine through an aerator or use it even. Yep. You like that too much. You don't want to spill that out, I know. There's an extra glass right there. Maybe you can use that. What's that?
Using the aerator that you just mentioned?
Yes.
Substitute for letting it air out?
It just helps in the process so it won't taste exactly like a freshly opened bottle. It'll move you in the direction. And you become your own experimenter. That's where it becomes fun. You know?
I
Yeah.
think I can, what happens for me is I can taste more of the constituent
Yes.
flavors.
Yes, it's great. Yeah. So Mei just said over here that she can taste more of the constituent flavors. Like she can really taste more of the components in that wine. Ah.
Lost them. I've lost them. Spicy vanilla.
Uh-huh.
That's the berries or dark
So
plums?
the spicy vanilla inside would be more the oak.
Right.
So in this case, what's happened is, and that's great, so the whole oak character of the wine has taken a back seat, and that has opened up much more to the secondary flavors. Yeah. So, and that's great because it's at a more integrated, advanced stage then. And this one's 48.
48, okay.
Yeah, which 48 in the full decanter, which in terms of this much space in a bottle would probably be more like 3.5 to 4 days.
Okay.
So without gassing or anything. So now this guy, now you can see some other things too. One place where there should be some obvious differences here too are on the finish. You probably notice that maybe it's not as, the acidity is not as intense. You probably notice that the feel of the dryness has changed a little bit. So those characters starting to change is where, at this point, the extra oxygen is not benefiting it further. It's still drinkable. It hasn't really gone to an oxidized place where it's fallen apart at all. No. But there was something about the version that had been 24 hours in the decanter, or let's say 2 days in a, with a third of the bottle poured out, that really had just opened up into this wonderful thing. So what I want to let you guys know is on the handout on our website, I wrote some stuff down for you guys on the back for learning more. There's a really cool video on the website, and so you'll just have to, since obviously you can't link from a piece of paper, you'll have to copy it. Not yet. So there's a really interesting video put together called, or an interesting piece I put together called "The Joy of Listening," which is really about a biodynamic way of observation and listening. And in there is a video on how to taste wine, which is really great. And there's also a video I did at Cowhorn, and it's also the second piece down, the original video with Cowhorn Vineyards, which is the Wine and Time play-by-play. What I will say about the Wine and Time play-by-play as a video, it's almost 20 minutes long. It is the most long-winded thing ever created in the video realm in the history of modern civilization.
Have a glass of wine.
So I would say two things. Have a glass of wine when you're watching it. That's great. And the other thing is, in that particular post that I wrote here for you about the second one, the original video with Bill Steele, I wrote a play-by-play underneath the video. So you can actually forward it to different things and know where in the timeline to forward it to so you can get to where you want to go. The first 3 minutes of that video, absolutely really important. And then Bill, so this was the 07. And remember, they planted their vines in 2005. So this was the 07 Cowhorn Syrah. So it's only a little over 2-year-old vines. So we were really skeptical. He was skeptical of whether the experiment would work, and so was I. What the experiment was, on Monday, they poured out half of the bottle of the 07 Cowhorn Syrah. On Tuesday, they opened a fresh bottle and did the same thing. Same thing on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I showed up on Friday, and we filmed a video with us tasting those 5 bottles, half emptied, side by side. Bill stood there in the video like this, kind of for the first part going, how did this guy, drag me into doing this with him? And by the second wine into it, he was like, oh, okay, this works. And you could see his body language is really fun, how it changed. And by the end, he was all excited, and it was really interesting because he didn't know young vines, a little skeptical. So, in any winery, in general, wine in general, everybody wants to know their stuff is good on the first sip because they got to sell it. So even when they're making natural wine, there's still the business side of life, where what's happening right now is for cash in the industry, the winery is releasing the wine before its time. The retailer puts it on its shelf, they're selling, or in the restaurant, and they're selling it to you before its time, and you're drinking it before, and you're buying it, taking it home and drinking it before its time. So if nowhere along that path it gets slowed down, you're never getting to experience what we're experiencing here. So I wanted to do that with Bill because I knew his wines would be great that way, Bill and Barbara Steele. So we were able to do that and really connect in to see what you guys have now seen here. So the video on the website is with the 07, which was a year younger vines, and we did it with 5 separate bottles. So you can actually see the way that whole experience went, if you want to. It was pretty cool. The third thing on the Learning More thing that I wrote in here is about, was an awesome thing. There's a winery called Eyrie. Any guys heard of E-Y-R-I-E? Yeah, exactly. David Lett passed away a few years ago. He's one of the founders he's one of the real pioneers and founders in the Oregon wine industry. He had a bottle of wine in a competition in Paris that did really, really great, that really put Oregon Pinot Noir on the map. Pinot Noir's indigenous home around the world is the Burgundy region of France, so that's where they went. This bottle was thrown into that competition. His son Jason is an awesome winemaker, is making the wine now, sticking to the same natural ideals. I went and tasted some stuff. I loved their Pinot Gris, white wine, and their Pinot Noir. The earthiness, the toned downness, the moderate alcohol, the lower alcohol, good sign of a wine that's made naturally and in balance. And I wanted to have an experience of how those wines would air. Well, Jason was kind enough to just give me a bottle of the Pinot Gris and the Pinot Noir, and he said, just do me a favor and taste them for at least a week. And I did. And this video is me sitting with one of my favorite natural winemakers in the United States, a guy named Matt Taylor, who's the winemaker, who used to be the winemaker at Arajo. He's now part of an amazing new project in Healdsburg called Front Porch Farm. Their first wines are about a year or 2 away for public. But we're sitting there enjoying the wines on this farm after they've been open 7 days. The one trick was we did not have any glassware. So do you know those little cone-shaped paper cups from the water dispensers of 70 or 80 years ago? No, not exactly. Either way, that's where we are, and it's educational and it's funny. And so that's what's on the last video that's in the organic wine post there. I don't know if that's just so funny. It's like, wow. Okay, side story I want to tell you is one of the things that really got me into seeing new possibilities, because that's what this is really about, new possibilities, was at a friend's house back in New York who put together, I'm from New York and used to run a wine shop there, and this guy put together what was titled an ancient wine dinner. So we tasted a number of wines, and we did this event maybe 10 years ago. There were a number of wines tasted from the 1961 vintage in Bordeaux, which is a classic year. We also had a couple of slightly older Bordeauxs, and then we went back to a wine from the 1947 Burgundy that it just had a shipper label on it, didn't even have a producer name, had the name of the village and a shipper. And what we did was, it was like that wine was the first wine of the night, and it was the earthiest essence, but it was still alive. It still had hints of fruit in it. And it just really shocked me. Peter did nothing but saute morels in butter with a dash of salt. And that combination couldn't have been more magical. The earthiness of the morels, once you tasted it, when it got hit, when it was followed up with this beautiful old Pinot Noir, the earthiness nullified each other, and actually this beautiful red raspberry cherry fruit in the 47 Burgundy actually came out. That was a paradigm-shifting wine moment in my world. The other thing in that night, the creme de la creme night, and everyone expected the wine to be horrible and just dead, was a 1900 Chateau Lafite Rothschild. So Peter had just gone on a mission to do this. And when the cork was pulled, the strangest thing was, first off, the wine wasn't dead. So it wasn't just what's called oxidized and gone. The thing that really got us going was that as we did a little air on it, you could see the acidity was still really strong and the fruit core was there. So it actually needed a little time to unwind, which was just, now you had to be, this sounds a little crazy, but you had to be, you really had to be there to experience it. But 13 people, pretty much 3/4 of them never shut up, and you could hear a pin drop. It was that kind of moment. And that's what really got me intrigued with, what I've lived by thinking is possible might not be the limits that I think they are. So, and that ties back to the biodynamic idea, which is really that the magic is in the mystery. So you guys are in the magic is in the mystery tour, because that's what all this is about. That's what all three of these components today, and that's what conscious wine is really about, is that the magic is in the mystery. If we have certain things that we know that we get used to in a particular $8.99 wine or whatever, those are habits that we create, and we like that. But what about the place outside that? What we know is fine. And then there's the part that we know that we don't know. But then there's the part that we don't know that we don't know. And that becomes a whole new set of possibilities where, there's a lot of magic there. And in that, you get to discover things like how fun this idea is. And the really great part with what you guys just experienced here is that this will be slightly different with every single wine you'll try. So if this interests you, this is a whole new game you get to play and a whole new land of discovery, which is going to get amped up more by the next section where we start to do wine and food.
All right.
So thanks, everybody. All right.